The morning began softly, with a dim, golden light slipping quietly through the thin curtains of the small living room. The world outside was still waking up. But inside the house, the day had already started long before the sun even touched the sky. The mother moved from room to room with slow, tired steps, her mind juggling thoughts of unfinished work, messages she had yet to reply to, and the endless list of chores that always seemed to grow overnight. The kettle on the stove rattled faintly as it heated, but even its small noises felt loud in the quiet home. She rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to shake off the heaviness that had clung to her since the previous night. Sleep had not come easily, and even when it did, it felt like it lasted only a moment. She checked her phone again, scrolling through notifications, rereading the schedule she had already memorized, hoping she had missed something that might make the day easier. She had not. Behind her, small footsteps padded softly on the cool floor. Her child had woken up and was standing at the doorway of the kitchen, holding a little blanket and blinking slowly as if the morning light made it difficult to see. The mother turned slightly and smiled, but it was a tired smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're up early," she said gently. The child nodded, rubbing their cheek against the blanket. They didn't speak at first. Instead, they just observed their mother, the way she hurried between the stove and the counter, the way her hair was tied up loosely, the way her shoulders looked heavy under invisible weight. The child's small fingers tightened around the blanket as if holding on. To it helped them understand something they were too young to express. The mother poured warm milk into a cup and placed it on the table. She reached out and brushed the child's hair lightly, the touch soft but rushed. "Drink this, okay?" she said, already turning back to the counter. The child climbed onto the chair, but kept looking at her rather than the cup. They watched her move around the kitchen, noticing how she barely paused, how she kept glancing at her phone, and how her voice sounded softer than usual, almost distant. As the child sipped the warm milk, they hummed a faint tune under their breath. It was a little melody they had learned somewhere, perhaps at school, perhaps from a cartoon, perhaps from a memory they didn't fully understand. It was gentle, almost like a whisper, easy to miss unless someone stopped to listen. But the mother did not stop. She had not stopped in days. She half heard the tune, enough to recognize the sound, but not enough to pay attention. Her head was full. Her mind was running ahead of her, planning the next tasks she needed to handle before noon. There were emails waiting for replies, a meeting that she couldn't be late for, laundry that had to be folded, and dishes still sitting in the sink. The child's humming slowed to a stop as they watched her. Their small shoulders lowered, and they pressed the cup closer to their chest. The mother didn't notice. She reached for her bag, quickly checked if her charger was inside, then set it down again when she remembered she wasn't leaving the house. She just felt like she should be. There was a promise she had made days earlier, and though she had tried to bury it under the many demands of her schedule, the child had not forgotten it. Children rarely forget the things that mattered to them. She had promised that they would sing together. It had been a simple promise at the time, something she thought she would icily find a moment for. But moments had slipped through her fingers, like sand, one after another, and now it felt like she was always making up for something, always too late, always too busy. The child gently placed the cup down and slid off the chair. They walked toward her quietly, their blanket dragging across the floor. They tugged lightly at her sleeve. "Mama?" the child asked softly. She looked down quickly, startled. Yes." "Said we sing, remember?" Her voice was small, hopeful, but a little unsure. The mother inhaled deeply, the kind of breath that carried both love and guilt at the same time. She knelt down so she could be closer to their height. Her hands rested gently on their arms. "I know," she said. "I remember. I'm just—" She paused, searching for words that didn't sound like excuses. "I'm very busy today. Maybe later, okay?" The child didn't argue. They didn't complain. They simply nodded, though their eyes dimmed in a way that made the mother's chest tighten. But she stood again, turning away because dealing with her tasks felt easier than dealing with that feeling in her chest. The child walked slowly back toward the window. It was their favorite spot in the house, the one place where the morning sun always touched the floor in a soft, warm patch. They sat down cross-legged and pulled the blanket over their lap. Outside, birds were perched on the wires, hopping lightly, as if sharing little secrets with each other. The child watched them quietly and then began humming again, their voice barely above a whisper. Melody was fragile but sweet, filled with a kind of innocent hope that only young hearts could hold. The mother, meanwhile, opened her laptop and began typing quickly, trying to finish a few things before the day swept her away again. She heard the humming this time too, but she didn't look up. She couldn't. She felt that if she stopped for even a moment, she would fall behind, and she already felt like she was running on borrowed energy. Minutes turned into an hour. The house slowly filled with the soft sounds of the child's humming, mixing with the tapping of the mother's fingers on the keyboard. They were in the same space, close, but separated by responsibilities the child could not understand. Every now and then, the mother glanced up and saw the child sitting alone near the window. Each time, she felt a pinch in her heart, a tug of something that told her she should go to them. But she pushed it aside. She told herself she would have time later. She told herself she was doing everything for them anyway. She told herself she couldn't stop working, not even for a moment. Still, she felt the distance growing on the other side of the room. The child played with the edge of their blanket, pulling at the threads. They wanted to go to her. They wanted to remind her again about the promise, but something held them back. Something told them she was too busy, too tired, too stressed. They didn't want to bother her, so they hummed instead. A little melody that carried more feelings than words could express. Hours passed slowly, and the mother's tasks felt never-ending. She stretched her neck, feeling the stiffness settle in. She checked the time and sighed deeply. Though she had been working non-stop, it still felt like she hadn't done enough. Suddenly she heard the child cough softly. Not a loud cough, just enough to make her turn her head. The child was still sitting near the window, hugging their blanket. She noticed now how quiet they had become, how their posture looked smaller, how they seemed lost in their own world. For a moment, the mother froze, realizing how long it had been since she had truly looked at them. She stood up slowly and walked toward the child. But before she reached them, her phone buzzed loudly on the table. She stopped, turned back, and checked it. Another message, another task, another thing pulling her attention away. She answered the message quickly, telling herself she would go to the child right after. But by the time she finished typing, a new message came. Then another. The child watched her from the window, their eyes following every move. They didn't say a word. They simply pressed their cheek against their blanket and let out a soft sigh. The mother eventually sat back down at the table, telling herself she had no choice. But the truth was, she felt trapped in a routine she didn't know how to break. The child continued humming quietly, the tune drifting through the room like a gentle reminder of the promise she had forgotten. But she didn't stop to hear it, not yet. And in that small home, its heart stayed close by distance, but far by moments, missed both waiting for the day to slow down. Even if just for a breath, the afternoon light settled gently into the house, warming the walls and creating soft shadows that stretched across the floor. Hours had passed since the morning rush, yet the feeling of distance between the mother and the child still lingered quietly in the air. The home was peaceful, but the kind of peace that felt too silent, too still, almost as if something tender was waiting to be noticed. The child sat again near the window, now drawing small shapes on the glass with their finger. Each shape was simpler: circle, a star, a little heart, but they erased them right after making them, as if unsure whether they wanted the drawings to stay. Their blanket rested loosely beside them, no longer wrapped tightly around their shoulders. They weren't humming anymore. Their little eyes stared at the sky, following a bird that flew past the window. It was one of those soft afternoons where everything felt calm but slightly heavy, like a quiet sigh. The child's face held a thoughtful expression, the kind children make when they're trying to understand something that doesn't fit into their small world. They were thinking about the promise again, the promise that kept replaying in their head. They remembered the moment clearly. Days ago, they had come home excited from school, eager to tell their mother about a new song they had learned. Their tiny hands had clapped together as they said they wanted to sing it with her. She had smiled warmly, then touched their cheek and said, "Of course. We'll sing it together later." That promise had stayed in the child's heart like a little treasure. But every day after that, the mother had been caught in a storm of work, calls, and stress. She was always rushing, always thinking ahead, always tired. The child didn't understand all of that, but they understood enough to feel that something they hoped for was slowly slipping away. Inside the kitchen, the mother stood by the counter, holding her phone in both hands. She wasn't reading anything urgent this time. She was simply staring at the screen, her mind wandering between exhaustion and worry. She felt the weight of the day pressing on her, and even though she tried to convince herself that she was doing her best, a small voice inside her whispered otherwise. She finally put the phone face down on the counter, took a slow breath, and looked around the quiet kitchen. The house felt too quiet, too still. It's a kind of stillness that made her heart heavy. She whispered to herself, "I should check on them." But her body didn't move. Something held her back, an invisible mix of worry, guilt, and fatigue. It took her a long moment before she finally pushed herself away from the counter and walked slowly toward the window where her child sat. She moved quietly, not wanting to startle them. From behind, she saw how small their back looked, how their shoulders were slightly hunched forward. Something inside her tightened. The child didn't hear her footsteps. They were lost in thought, tracing circles on the glass again. "Hey," the mother said softly. The child turned their head slightly, looking up at her with wide, gentle eyes. Their face brightened for a moment, but then the light dimmed again, as if they remembered that she had been too busy earlier. She sat down beside them, placing herself gently on the floor. The sunlight brushed her face as she looked at the child, trying to read their expression. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from the child's forehead. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. The child shrugged lightly, their voice small. "Nothing." She smiled a little, though her heart knew the truth. It didn't look like nothing. The child hesitated, playing with their fingers. "I was just waiting." Their voice carried a tiny tremble. The mother swallowed, a wave of guilt rising inside her. "Waiting for what?" The child looked down at their lap, drawing slow circles on their blanket. "For when you're not busy?" Those words hit her harder than she expected. They were simple. Words from a young heart, but they carried emotions she couldn't ignore. She felt a sting behind her eyes, quite ache she couldn't hide. She reached out and gently held the child's hands inside hers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know I've been busy. I know I haven't had much time lately." The child didn't pull away. They looked at her with soft, hopeful eyes. "It's okay," they said, even though it wasn't. The mother shook her head slowly. "No, it's not okay. You matter. Your feelings matter." She spoke gently, carefully, afraid her voice might crack. The child looked down again, their fingers curling around hers. "I just wanted to sing with you," they said quietly. That small sentence seemed to echo through the room like a tiny, honest truth. The mother felt it land straight in her heart. She squeezed the child's hands and whispered, "I know. And I haven't forgotten. I promise I haven't." But even as she said it, she knew promises didn't mean much when they were repeated too many times and never kept. The child nodded slowly, but they didn't seem fully convinced. They weren't upset, they weren't angry, or simply tired of waiting. The mother looked toward the window, the sky now shifting to a softer shade. She wished she could freeze time, pause everything else, and simply be present. Also, new life outside their little home would not slow down for her. She leaned her head back against the wall and let out a long, quiet breath. "I wish I could give you all my time," she said, speaking honestly. "Sometimes I get so caught up with work and things I have to do, but I never want you to feel like you're second." The child leaned gently against her shoulder. "I don't want all your time," they whispered, "just a little." Those words settled in her chest like a soft, painful truth. Children never ask for much, just enough to feel loved, seen, and important. She placed her arm around their small shoulders and pulled them closer. The child rested their head against her side, finding comfort in a closeness they had missed. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. They just sat quietly, watching the sky through the window. The afternoon light wrapped around them like a warm blanket, soft and peaceful. Finally, the child broke the silence. The song, the one I wanted to sing. I still remember it. Mother smiled softly, rubbing their back. I'd love to hear it, she said. The child's face lit up for a moment, but then they hesitated again, when her chest tightened. She wanted to say right now, but she knew she wasn't ready. There were still responsibilities waiting for her, things she couldn't ignore. But she couldn't bring herself to disappoint them again either. She looked toward the kitchen, then back at her child. Her mind was torn between what she had to do and what she wanted to do. She placed a gentle hand on their cheek. Soon, she said softly, I promise soon. The child nodded, trusting her again, though a small shadow of doubt still lingered in their eyes. They leaned into her, resting quietly. The mother held them close, wishing she could freeze that moment. Wishing she could keep them safe from disappointment and longing. Wishing she could give them the time they deserved. Slowly, the child began humming the same little melody again. This time, it was quieter, softer, more unsure than before, but it still carried that gentle warmth, that innocence only children had. The mother listened, really listened, even though she didn't join in. The melody flowed through the room like a small reminder of what truly mattered. She closed her eyes for a moment and let the sound wash over her. It soothed something inside her, something she didn't know had been hurting. Minutes passed and the child's humming faded into the quiet of the room. They rested comfortably against her, their breathing slow and calm. The mother knew she could not keep pushing things aside forever. She had already let too many moments slip away. She looked down at the child sleeping softly against her side, their face peaceful and trusting. She whispered to herself, I need to do better. In that soft afternoon, the weight she carried didn't feel lighter, but her purpose felt clearer. The musical moment the child longed for had not arrived yet, but the seed of it had started to grow inside her heart. She promised herself quietly this time, not with casual words, but with the kind of promise that comes from deep inside. She would not let the precious moments continue slipping away. She leaned her head gently against the child's and closed her eyes, holding that small, quiet moment like a treasure. Soon, she told herself. Soon, she would make it right. And this time, she meant it with all her heart. The next day began with the same quiet stillness, but something felt different in the air. The mother woke earlier than usual, though her body felt heavy, and her mind still carried the weight of the day before. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long moment, staring at the soft light creeping through the curtains. All the silence in. The house wrapped around her like a reminder, gentle but persistent. She rubbed her hands together, trying to warm them. Her thoughts drifted back to the child asleep against her side the previous afternoon. The way their tiny fingers had curled into her shirt, the way their humming had softened into calm breathing. The memory had stayed with her through the night. Settling deep in her heart, she whispered to herself, I need to find the time. But even as she said it, she knew the day ahead would be another packed one. Responsibilities didn't disappear just because she wished for more peace. Life didn't pause. But maybe, just maybe, she could learn to slow down. She stood and walked quietly toward the kitchen, preparing breakfast with slow movements. She avoided the rush she usually fell into every morning. She took her time. She moved with intention. Each step felt like a small effort to change something, even if she didn't fully understand what that change would look like. A few minutes later, the child woke up and wandered into the kitchen, their blanket draped over one shoulder. Their hair was messy from sleep, and their eyes were still half open. But when they saw their mother, something warm flickered across their face. Good morning, she said softly. The child mumbled a sleepy morning, then rubbed their eyes. They looked at the food on the table, simple toast, eggs, and warm milk, but what caught their attention more was the way their mother seemed calmer than usual. Her shoulders weren't tense. She wasn't rushing, she was simply there. The child climbed onto a chair and sat quietly watching her. Did you sleep well? She asked. The child nodded. Yes. And after a short pause they added, Did you sleep? She smiled, a soft, real smile, a little. The child picked up their cup and took a slow sip. You look tired, they said in an honest, gentle voice. The mother laughed under her breath, surprised by the child's simple honesty. I am, she admitted, but I'm okay. The child studied her face for a moment, as if trying to understand something deeper. Then they looked down at their cup again. There was no humming this morning, soft melody floating through the room. The mother noticed that immediately. The child's silence felt louder than any words could be. She wondered if they had stopped humming because they felt discouraged, or because their hope was slowly fading. She wanted to tell them she remembered the promise. She wanted to tell them she hadn't forgotten. But she didn't want to make another promise she wasn't ready to keep. Not yet. After breakfast, the mother set up her laptop on the table, preparing for another long round of tasks. But before she opened it, she looked toward the child who was sitting on the floor near the window again. They were arranging their small toys in a neat line, their face focused but calm. She called gently, "Come here for a moment." The child looked up, confused but curious. They stood slowly and walked toward her. The mother lifted them onto her lap, something she hadn't done in a long time. The child rested their head against her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her arms around them. "I didn't forget," she said quietly. The child blinked. "Forget what?" "The song," she replied. "The one you wanted to sing?" A soft spark lit up the child's eyes, like a small candle flame flickering back to life. "Really?" They whispered. She nodded. "Yes, I remember, and I want to hear it." She paused and took a slow breath. "Maybe not this very minute, but today, I'll make sure we have a moment today." The child nodded slowly, trying not to look too excited. Almost afraid to believe it completely, they slipped off her lap and returned to the window. But their steps were lighter now, and their shoulders weren't hunched the way they were the day before. The mother watched them go with a small smile. She opened her laptop and began working, but she did it differently this time. She took breaks. She allowed herself moments to breathe. She didn't rush as frantically as usual. Each pause reminded her of her promise. Promise she was determined not to push aside again. The hours passed softly. The mother finished her tasks slowly but steadily, checking them off one by one. Every time she glanced toward the window, she saw the child there drawing again, sometimes playing with their toys, sometimes simply watching the world outside, but the humming never turned. She missed it. The late afternoon arrived gently. The sun dipped lower, casting warm golden light across the floor. This was the time she always felt most tired, when her body wanted to sink into a chair and rest, when her mind felt stretched thin, but today was different. She closed her laptop. The sound of it snapping shut made the child look up immediately. They looked almost nervous, unsure whether she was done with work or just taking a break. The mother stood and walked toward the window. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. The child nodded and scooted over. Making a tiny space for her, she sat beside them, her back against the wall, her legs stretched out in front of her. She looked out the window with them, watching the warm light dance across the rooftops outside. After a moment, she asked softly, "Can you hum it for me? Just a little." The child's fingers curled nervously around the edge of their blanket. They hesitated for a long second, then took a tiny breath. A soft melody floated out, more shy than before, as if uncertain whether it was welcome. But the sound was pure, simple, gentle, the kind of sound that made a person feel something deep in their chest. The mother closed her eyes, letting the melody drift through her like warm air. She hadn't realized how much she needed this sound, how much she had missed it. When the child stopped, they looked up at her carefully. "Did you like it?" they asked. She nodded, her voice soft. "Very much." The child smiled, small and hopeful. "Can you sing the words too?" she asked, nudging them gently. The child bit their lip. "Maybe if you listen." She turned her body slightly toward them. "I'm listening," she whispered. The child took another breath and began singing the words softly at first, then louder as their confidence grew. Their voice wasn't perfect. It wobbled at some parts and faded at others. But it was real. It was pure. It was honest. The mother watched them with gentle eyes, taking in every note, every expression, every little breath. She felt something inside her soften a place that had been tight for too long. When the child finished, they looked up, waiting for her reaction. "That was beautiful," she said, with a warm smile. The child's face lit up fully now, all doubt melting away. "Can you sing it with me?" They asked shyly. She hesitated. Not because she didn't want to, but because she felt a little shy too. It had been a long time since she had sung anything out loudest, especially with someone watching, but she nodded. "Let's try," she said. The child giggled softly, excited. They started humming again, guiding her into the tune. Slowly, she joined in. Her voice was quiet, almost whisper-like at first. But as the melody continued, her voice warmed, grew steadier. Their voices blended not perfectly, not like trained singers, but in a natural, simple way, a way that felt real and gentle. The moment was small, but it was everything. They sang through the song once, then twice, then again without even realizing they had started it over. Each time, the child grew more confident. Each time, the mother felt something inside her heal a little. When they finally stopped, both of them were smiling without even noticing. The mother gently ruffled the child's hair. "You have such a sweet voice," she said. The child giggled again. "You too," they replied. She laughed, a soft, real laugh. "I'm not so sure," she said. The child leaned their head against her arm. "I like when you sing," they whispered. The mother wrapped her arm around them and pulled them close. The warmth of the moment settled around them like a blanket, soft, comforting.
Forgettable.
For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she felt genuinely present. Not thinking about work. Not rushing. Not worrying about everything she had. Just there, with her child. Sharing a moment that felt small to the world, but enormous to her heart. She whispered softly, "Thank you for waiting for me." The child looked up. "I knew you would come." Her throat tightened with emotion she didn't try to hide. "I'm here," she said, touching their cheek. "I'm really here." The golden evening light held them in its warmth as the two of them stayed by the window, letting the quiet settle around them. The world outside continued moving, but inside their small home, time felt gentle. The musical moment the child had been waiting for had finally begun. And the mother knew deeply, truly, that this time she wouldn't let it slip away. This time, she would hold on. The afternoon light filled the small room with a warm, soft glow, the kind that made everything feel a little calmer, a little slower, as if the world itself wanted to pause and listen. The mother sat on the edge of the couch, holding the cup of tea she had made for herself but forgotten to drink. Her mind was somewhere else, replaying the events of the last few weeks in slow motion. So much had changed, and yet somehow everything also felt strangely familiar, like she had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. The child sat on the floor nearby, legs crossed, holding a small notebook that had started to look worn from how often it had been opened. It was filled with simple lines, random words, and small notes about how music made them feel. The mother had seen similar notebooks before, ones she wrote in when she was younger. But seeing one in the child's hands made her heart feel unexpectedly full. For a long time, both of them stayed quiet. Not because they didn't have anything to say, but because the room felt peaceful enough that silence did not feel empty. The mother finally set her cup down and leaned back, letting out a long breath. The child looked up, as if sensing something shifting. "You're thinking too much again," the child said softly. The mother smiled, though it was a tired smile. "Maybe I am," she replied. "But sometimes thinking helps me understand things better." "Does it?" the child asked. "Because sometimes when I think too much, I get confused." The mother let out a small laugh, a real one this time. "That happens to me too." The child closed the notebook and crawled a little closer, their curiosity growing. "What were you thinking about?" The mother paused. She wasn't sure how to explain everything in words that would make sense, but she knew she wanted to be honest. "I was thinking about how everything is changing," she said gently. "You're growing so fast. You're learning new things, finding things you love, things that make you happy. And I'm trying my best to keep up with you." The child blinked slowly, taking in every word. "But you're doing good," they said. "You don't have to try so hard." The mother shook her head softly. "I don't think I could stop trying even if I wanted to." There was something tender and raw in the way she said it, the kind of truth that only came from love. The deep and quiet kind that stayed even when things got difficult. The child reached out and held her hand. "Can we practice again today?" they asked. "The song we made yesterday." The mother squeezed their hand lightly. "Of course." The child got up quickly, excited, and fetched the small keyboard from the corner. It wasn't a big instrument, and some of the keys made a faint buzzing sound when pressed. But it was the one they had, and it held a story now. The mother watched as the child plugged it in with careful hands, the same way she used to when she practiced late into the night as a teenager. "Ready?" the child asked. "Ready?" the mother answered. The child began playing the soft melody they had come up with together. Simple, gentle notes that rose and fell like quiet breathing. The mother hummed along at first, feeling her voice warm up slowly. She hadn't sung like this in years. Not in front of anyone. But with the child, it didn't feel like performing. It felt like home. Her voice started low, barely above a whisper, but with each line, it grew steadier, warmer, more alive. The child smiled without looking away from the keys, their fingers moving with a confidence they didn't know they had. When the melody reached the part they always struggled with, the child hesitated, but the mother leaned forward. "Keep going," she said softly. "Even if it's not perfect." The child nodded and played through it, and even though the notes were a little uneven, they made it to the end. When the last sound faded, the mother exhaled deeply. "That was beautiful," she said. The child's face lit up. "Really? Really?" For a moment, everything felt easy again. The mother leaned back, letting the music settle into the room like a warm blanket. She wasn't thinking about tomorrow, or about the worries she tried to hide. For once, everything was simple. But the calm didn't last long. The phone on the table buzzed, breaking the moment. The mother's expression changed instantly, not drastically, but enough that the child noticed. She reached for the phone and turned it over, staring at the screen for a moment longer than she needed to. The child waited, their fingers hovering uncertainly above the keyboard. "Is everything okay?" they asked. The mother set the phone down gently, but her voice sounded different now. "Yes," she said, though it didn't sound convincing. "It's just something I have to think about." The child didn't push, but they knew something felt off. "Do you want to stop?" "No," she said quickly. Then softer, "No, I want to stay here with you." But even as she said it, her eyes drifted back toward the phone. The child lowered the volume on the keyboard and sat next to her again. "If you're worried about something, you can tell me," they said. "I won't get scared." The mother smiled sadly. "I know you won't. You're braver than you think. Then tell me," the child insisted. The mother hesitated. She didn't want to burden the child with her own fears. She had always believed that a child deserved to feel safe, free from the heavy things adults carried. But the child was growing, learning. Watching and pretending everything was fine sometimes made things feel heavier. She finally spoke. "There's something coming up that might change things a little. It's nothing dangerous, but it's important. And I'm scared I won't be able to handle it the way I should." The child's eyebrows pulled together. "But you always handle everything." "Not always," the mother admitted softly. "But I try. Then I'll help you," the child said simply. The mother almost laughed, but it came out more like a shaky breath. "You already do," she whispered. "More than you know." The child leaned their head against her shoulder and she wrapped an arm around them. They sat like that for a long time, letting the quiet settle once more. Eventually, the child broke the silence. "Can we finish the song tomorrow?" "Yes," the mother said. "We'll finish it together." The child nodded and packed the keyboard away carefully. The mother watched them with a soft expression, her heart full but heavy at the same time. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this moment, this music. This bond was something she wanted to hold on to as they got ready for the evening. The mother's mind kept returning to the message on her phone. It was an opportunity she had once dreamed about, but let go of a long time ago. Something that could change her life, their life in a way she'd never expected. But it also terrified her. She knew she had a choice to make. And whatever she chose, it would affect both of them. But for now, she focused on the sound of the child humming their melody in the hallway. their small voice filling the house like sunlight. And in that moment, she found a little courage. The morning light crept slowly into the small home, spreading across the floor like a soft invitation to wake up. The mother had been awake long before the sun appeared. She lay quietly, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts looping the same message she had read the night before. It still felt unreal, like something meant for someone else. But it had her name on it. Her voice, her chance. She got up quietly so she wouldn't wake the child, and walked into the kitchen. The air felt cool, and the silence made her thoughts sound even louder. She boiled water for tea, but barely tasted it when she took a sip. Her mind kept circling the same worry. If she took this step, everything would change. If she didn't, she might regret it forever. As she stood by the window, lost in thought, she heard soft footsteps behind her. The child appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing their eyes. "Are you up already?" the mother asked, forcing a gentle smile. The child nodded sleepily. "I heard you moving." "Sorry," the mother said. "I didn't mean to wake you." The child walked closer, looking up at her with the same worried expression they had the night before. "Did you think more about the thing from your phone?" The mother let out a slow breath. "Yes, I did." "And?" the child asked carefully. She sighed and looked away for a moment. "I still don't know what to do." The child didn't speak right away. Instead, they pulled out a chair and sat down, watching her quietly. They had learned something new over the years. Sometimes the mother needed time, but sometimes she also needed someone to push her gently. "Can you tell me again what it said?" the child asked. The mother hesitated, but then reached for her phone, unlocked it, and handed it to the child. The message was still open. The child read it slowly. It was an invitation from a small local studio, one that had seen the short video she and the child had posted. Days ago, a video of them practicing the little song they created together. They hadn't planned to share it, but the child insisted, saying someone might like it. Mother had posted it without expecting anything, but someone did like it. Someone who wanted to meet her. Someone who thought her voice could become something more. The child looked up after reading. "They want you to visit them and record the song?" The mother nodded. "Yes, they said they liked the sound of it. They want to talk about maybe working on more music." The child's eyes grew wide with excitement. "That's amazing." The mother smiled, but her worry didn't fade. "It is, but it's also a big change. I don't know if I can do something like this now. Taking time away, figuring out how to balance life, making sure everything stays steady for you. It's a lot." The child reached for her hand. "But I'll be here. And we're doing it together, right?" Her throat tightened a little. "I don't want this to make things hard for you." "It won't," the child said firmly. "You always take care of me. Let me help take care of you too." There was a long silence, the kind that said more than words could. The mother sat down beside the child. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them on the table. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The child squeezed her arm. "I know, but you're good at scary things." She let out a small laugh. "Am I? Yes," the child said confidently. "You're the bravest person I know." The mother's eyes softened in a way that made her look both fragile and strong. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "Maybe we should go see the studio," she said quietly. The child's smile grew wide and bright. "Yes, let's do it." The decision didn't erase her worries, but it made her feel lighter, as if taking the first step was all she needed. Later, that afternoon, they rode the bus together to the small studio on the other side of town. The mother kept adjusting her bag on her shoulder, her nerves growing with every stop the bus made. The child nudged her gently. "It's going to be okay," they whispered. She nodded, taking another deep breath. When they arrived, the studio looked surprisingly simple. Nothing like the big music places she had imagined. Inside, the walls were covered with handwritten notes and small pictures of people recording. The atmosphere felt warm, welcoming. A man at the front desk greeted them kindly and brought them to a small room with a microphone, a few instruments, and a computer. "You must be the voice we heard in that clip," he said with a friendly smile. "It's really beautiful." The mother's cheeks warmed. "Thank you. It wasn't planned." We were just practicing. That's the best kind of music, he said. Natural, honest, real. He invited her to try recording the little song again, just to see how it sounded when captured professionally. The mother looked nervous, but the child stood beside her. Giving her a reassuring thumbs dash up, she closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and started to sing. Her voice was soft at first, but as she reached the familiar notes, something shifted. Her body relaxed, her breathing steadied, and the room filled with a sound that felt warm and full of emotion. The child watched her with wide eyes, amazed. She looked different when she sang lighter, freer, almost glowing. When she finished, the man behind the computer nodded in appreciation. That, he said, was beautiful. You have something special. The mother's eyes sparkled, unsure whether to believe him. He continued, if you're interested, we could help you work on more music. Slowly, at your pace. No pressure. Just exploring what you can do. The mother glanced at the child, who was already nodding excitedly. She smiled shyly. I think I'd like that. The feeling in the room shifted, hope settling into something more real. That evening, as they walked home, the sky turned pale orange, and the child hummed the tune they had created together. The mother listened, her heart slowly filling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. You know, she said softly, I never thought I would get a chance like this again. You deserve it, the child said simply. And you, she whispered, helped me find my voice again. They reached home as the first stars appeared in the sky. The house felt different now, not bigger, not brighter, but warmer. Like the beginning of something new. The mother set her bag down and looked at the child. Tomorrow, she said, we should write another song. The child grinned. Really? Yes, she said. This time, maybe something a little stronger. Something hopeful. Child grabbed their notebook and sat cross-legged on the floor. Let's start now. The mother laughed quietly and sat beside them. They scribbled lines, erased them, rewrote them, played with ideas, and hummed random notes until something started forming. Not perfect, not polished, but theirs. Hours passed before they realized it was late. The mother leaned back, stretching her tired arms. We'll finish it tomorrow, she said. The child nodded. Resting their head against her shoulder, there was no big celebration. No dramatic moment, no sudden success. Just a mother and child sharing music. Sharing hope, sharing time, and in that simplicity, something beautiful grew. For the first time in a long while, the mother felt brave enough to imagine a different future. A future shaped not by fear, but by sound, by love, by the quiet, powerful magic they created together. And as the house settled into silence that night, the melody they had written, still incomplete, still rough, floated softly between them, a promise, a beginning.